Okay, so good morning. Just going to let me grab the books.
Oh, yeah.
So we're continuing our study of Ajahn Sucitto's book, the Pāramī, and we've got 3 extra copies here, so I'll just leave them here. So if any of you would like a copy, they're just sitting right there. And the Pāramīs are the 10 beautiful qualities of mind that we want to develop. And today we're talking about Viriya, energy. So energy is something that's very often talked about by the Buddha. So not only is it found in this collection of the 10 Pāramīs, but it's also one of the 7 factors of awakening. So very important. It's one of the 4 bases of power. So we're talking about mental power. And so these are the sort of the groundwork or the basis for those. And they're called the iddhipadas. And the first sort of base for power is interest, like it's having a desire for liberation. The second, and this is energy. So this is where energy comes in again. It's the second iddhipada. And that refers to having the energy to persevere in the 4 right efforts. And the third iddhipada is having a clear mind. And the 4th one is investigation. And then these sort of are the baseline for the 5 powers of the mind. And energy, again, is included in these powers of the mind. They're called the indriyas and the balas. And they are faith, energy, mindfulness, samadhi, which is stillness, and wisdom. So those are sort of like the categories of teachings where energy shows up. So one of the major things that we're working on in our spiritual journey is working on letting go of unwholesome habit energies. And so having energy allows us to sort of resist the push or the pull of these habit energies. And they're tricky because we may not even be aware of them. We're just sort of on automatic pilot with them. And so this is where mindfulness is so important, to become mindful of their presence. Now, it's important to know that using energy to work on our habit energies is not anything to do with brute force. It's about using energy to sustain sort of a gentle, persistent investigation of the habit energy until it shifts. And what does habit energy look like? A million things. But it can look like worry or stress or doubt, addictions, laziness, workaholism, perfectionism, insecurity, trust issues, on and on and on and on. So energy's chief function is to keep us alert in these situations where we tend to drift off into automatic pilot without awareness of these just habitual ways of being. So I just want to take a little sidestep here and talk about investigation. For spiritual investigation is not thinking. Usually we think about, we're going to investigate something, we're going to think about it. But investigation is not thinking. And the Buddha says this very, very clearly in the middle length sayings, Majjhima Nikaya 125. And there he says, come, meditators, abide, contemplating the body, contemplating the feelings, contemplating the mind, and contemplating the factors, the hindrances, and the factors of awakening. But do not think thoughts connected with the body, connected with the feelings, with the mind, with the hindrances and the factors of awakening. So he's saying to contemplate or investigate, but not with thinking. Because just think of all the times you've had thoughts looping around in your mind. And so if thinking would have solved the problem you're working on, it would have been solved a long time ago, because it's not solving it, that they're just looping. So we got to stop this looping. It's not serving us. Instead, we want to settle our mind with our meditation object, get it calm and clear. And then in this state of clarity, we want to look at this habit energy or issue or problem. We want to be mindfully aware of the situation, be aware of how our body's reacting to it, what emotion is up, what our self-image is in relation to this. And then we just want to drop in a question, something like, what's the root? What's the root of this situation? What's the cause of this habit energy or whatever that's going on? And then you just listen for what's going to come up from the unconscious. And it's interesting, Anagarika Bethany was telling me about one of her teachers who said, thoughts are not thinking. So consider how often thoughts just pop up into your mind. Like you haven't been thinking about them. They just, boop, there they are. And so that's that's what we're waiting for. That's what we're looking for in this situation. Kind of waiting for a solution or an answer or something to pop up. And the causes and conditions for this solution or idea or whatever to pop up into the mind is the calmness and clarity of our mind that we develop through our meditation practice, and our mindfulness and our willingness to be truthful, to not hide from these things that are coming up, because it may be things about ourselves that we don't want to face or know about. But so we need to have so truthfulness is a part here. And I know when I first heard about this and tried it, I was quite amazed. Like several times in my life, I've had a situation where it just didn't feel like there was a solution. Like could either be A or B, and both A and B were awful. And so I tried this out, and I just said, what can I do? And then I would just let it go. I'd go to, just drop in the question and not think about it, go to bed. And then I couldn't believe, like I'd wake up in the morning and there'd be the solution that wasn't A or B, it was C. And it was a beautiful solution. So anyway, this works. Okay, so that was a sidebar. So now back to energy. Energy needs to be regulated. Not too little, not too much. Too little is sloth and torpor, and too much is like agitation and anxiety. And energy gets irregular because our attention gets like caught up in attraction, like desiring things, or aversion, like not wanting what's present, or just being confused. And so these things can cause us to feel overwhelmed. Now on Tuesdays, like we have meditation groups Friday mornings and Tuesday evenings. So on Tuesdays, we've been studying the 5 ways to focus the mind, to let go of all of these things. So I'm not going to talk about that right now. They're recorded, and you can go and listen to all these different methods for letting go of these intrusive thoughts or desires or aversions. Now, what to do when we're tired, like we're tired and we don't feel like we have any energy. Then the most useful thing to do with the bit of energy you have is to practice kindness. And I had to do this for quite a few years. I had quite a severe sleep disorder, and I was exhausted. I couldn't keep my mind on my meditation object which was breath, for more than 1 or 2 breaths. And then boom, it just drift off somewhere. I just didn't have the energy. to keep it focused. And so I spent a couple of years just really practicing gentleness and kindness towards myself. Like I accepted that this is a reality. You know, I had done everything. I'd gone to the sleep clinic, and I just, read all the books and done all the methods. And I still wasn't sleeping. I was exhausted. And so that was the reality. I accepted that was the reality. And then I just spent a couple of years, and my major practice was just being kind and gentle. Yeah. Okay, now another big enemy of energy is doubt. And doubt in our Buddhist meditation practice refers to doubting the teachings of the Buddha. Are they true? Are they helpful? So that's what doubt is referring to here. It's not referring to other kinds of doubt. So as I mentioned earlier, energy is one of the 5 powers of the mind. And the powers are faith, energy, mindfulness, samadhi. Samadhi is stillness, being open, expansive, and having unmoving attention on one object, like our breath. And then the final power is wisdom. So faith comes before energy. So faith is the opposite of doubt. Having faith that the Buddha's teachings are helpful, that they are talking about reality, they are true. So if we're aware of suffering in our life, and then we hear the teachings of the Buddha and think, oh, this might help me, then that thought can give rise to some energy. And then when you actually test out the teachings and you get some results, then that's called confirmed faith. It's not just hearsay from somebody else saying, oh, I've heard about this and, it helped me, it's good. Then that's unconfirmed faith. But it's still, if you think, oh, help my friend, maybe it'll help me, then that gives you some energy. And then when you actually try it out and it works for you, then that gives you even more energy because you're seeing the truth of it yourself. So I was going to just tell you about one of my first experiences with confirmed faith. I had done this little weekend workshop in talking about the teachings of the Buddha and mindfulness meditation. And I think the next weekend I went to Toronto for a conference. And boy, when I go to a conference, I go to a conference like I want to learn, like feed me. I don't go for shopping and sightseeing. I go there to learn, like I want to hear this stuff. And so the first couple of days had gone well. I was staying with my brother, and I had learned how to make it to the metro station. And the metro had taken me very quickly to the hotel where the conference was. Anyway, the third morning was a Sunday. I arrive at the metro station, big iron grill. It's closed, like it doesn't open till much later on Sunday. So I'm panicking, like just, because I want to hear this lecture and I'm going to miss it. I'm going to be late. And so I just got this huge panic. But then I remembered the teachings I'd had from the weekend before. So I went to my breath. And I could literally feel all this tension from that little few minutes of panic. I could feel it literally like draining out of my body through my feet into the ground. I went, wow, that's pretty good. So I was feeling calm. Then in a few moments, I started thinking about being late until then the panic came. So then I could feel the difference between how my body felt full of this panic and anxiety. And then I went back to my breath and felt calm. So then the next time I felt calm, I thought, okay, I have to make a plan. So my plan was just to walk down the street until I found a bus stop. So that was fine. I did walking meditation. So I'm still feeling calm. So I'm feeling pretty good. Like this feels nice compared to being panicky, right? I'm enjoying this. So then I get to the stop. And then I think, what if the buses don't run on Sunday? So I'm panicking again. But then I went back to my breath, got calm again. And then I made a plan. I said, okay, I'm going to stand here for 10 minutes. Then if there's no bus, I'm going to find a payphone. So this is in the days before cell phones. And so I thought, then I'll phone the bus company and ask, when do the buses run? But anyway, a bus came in a minute or so, like Jubilee. And I asked him where he went, and he went right to the hotel. So like, yay, I'm feeling great. Get on the bus and relax. And then he stops at the next block to pick up somebody. And then he stops at the next block. And then he stopped. And the metro like went zoom, like, you know, like huge long distances, and then would have a stop and then zoom, huge. This is stopping every single block. So then I'm panicking again, thinking, I'm never going to make it on time. And you know, I have this Scottish Ukrainian heritage. You're like tight-fisted, like you don't spend money on things. My parents, you know, had been through the world wars and depressions. Like, you know, you didn't spend money on things like taxis. So there was no way I was getting off the bus and taking a taxi. So anyway, I did the breathing meditation again, got calm, and just said to myself, okay, I'm not taking a taxi. Like there's no other way, because I'm not taking a taxi. So I either make it on time or I don't. So I accepted that reality that I had no control over what time. So I just sat there and did breathing meditation. So I stayed pretty calm, got to my bus stop, ran in, and I actually was like exactly on time. Ran in, found the room, ran in. It was full, but there were a couple of seats in the front row. I ran in, sat down just as the lecture was starting. So there I was taking my notes, listening. But then about half an hour later, I had this sudden realization. Wow, I'm sitting here, I'm listening, and I'm taking notes, because my habit energy, like even though what I wanted, the whole goal was to get there on time, hear the lecture, take notes, but my habit energy would have been to post-hash the trauma of the closed metro station. So prior to this little weekend meditation training, I would have arrived and then I would have gone, oh, I can't believe I made it. That was so horrible. The metro was closed. And then the bus was stopping at every block. And I wouldn't have heard a word the lecturer was saying, because I would have been sitting there going, oh my God, because that was my previous habit energy. But I had already, after one little weekend, I was experiencing the fruits of the practice. I had got there, and then I was being in the moment, and I was listening, and I was taking notes. So anyway, that was the fact that I was doing that and not doing the dramatic, oh my God thing and missing the lecture. That was the most significant thing to me. That just really hit like, wow, this is powerful stuff. That really impressed me. But also the beautiful feeling of calm, like just being able to, in a few seconds, go from panic to calm. That was also a beautiful. So that gave me tremendous energy towards following up on the teachings of the Buddha, learning more, energy to do my practice every day. That was amazing for me. And then Ahimsa here told me another story about faith. So my story was about confirmed faith. So this is the story of a mathematics student called George Danzig. And this is back in like around 1938 or something. And he was going to University of California, Berkeley, and he had this mathematics professor, Professor Naiman. And one morning, probably because he'd been studying late, he slept in. So he woke up late, ran to the class, got in, and he saw there were two mathematical problems on the board. And he thought, well, this must be our homework assignment. So he wrote them down. And then he went home, and they were kind of a little more difficult than normal student problems. But he solved them and handed in his, quote, homework, only later to find out these were not homework problems. The professor had put on the board these two unsolved mathematical sort of mysteries that none of the mathematicians to date had been able to sort of solve this mathematical problem. So he was just sort of teaching this to the class. But here, Danzig didn't know that this was sort of impossible. Like, so there was no doubt in his mind. He just thought, oh, this is a student's problem. You know, this is a solvable mathematics problem. This is what they give us students to do. So he went home and he did it. And I mean, of course, combined with his skill, sad, but a beautiful story where he wasn't beset by doubt. You know, he just had the faith that, oh, this is a student problem. And, you know, so that was his thesis. Yeah, because doubt can really rob us of energy to work through our habit energies, through our problems. Okay, another issue is setting boundaries. Setting boundaries is very important. We set a boundary over what is unskillful and can lead to harmful results versus what's skillful and can nourish us, and what's ethical. We have inside our boundary what is ethical, and what's nourishing, supportive to us. So we can always ask, is doing whatever this is I'm doing at the moment, is this for my own welfare? Is it for the welfare of others or for the welfare of both of us? Does it lead out of stress to peace? And it's extremely important not to compare our own energy level with that of others, because it's variable. You know, some people have boundless energy and other people, maybe because of medical issues or just genetics or whatever, have lower energy. And so don't be comparing yourself. This is one of the teachings of the Buddha. He says, never look at others and say, I'm better than, or I'm worse than, or even that I'm the same as. So we want to determine the amount of energy that we have and then set a boundary around that to work out, you know, so that we work with the amount of energy that we have, not what we think we should have, not what other people have, but what is the reality of the energy that we have. And it's same with our emotions. Some people are very emotionally robust and others aren't. Again, usually dependent on our past experiences. And so we want to have a boundary and protect ourselves. We don't want to go out and put ourselves into situations that we know are going to be really emotionally over the top for us. And then it's interesting, Ajahn Sucitto said, you can't make a boundary out of, well, I suppose I ought to give that up one of these days. So I think we've all sort of had habit energies that we're thinking, this isn't the best. I really should let it go one of these days. And he said, that's not making a boundary. A boundary would be like, this is not helpful. Let's stop it. Thought that was cute. And we also have to set boundaries around our intellectual activity, asking is, what I'm spending my time thinking about, is this just a distraction or is it really, really important for me? So just look to what's hooking your energy, because hooking your attention rather, what's hooking your attention, because your energy goes where your attention goes. So is it going on useless, harmful things, or is it going on helpful, nourishing, skillful, good things? We don't want to fritter away our energy on these unhelpful or useless things. And then Ajahn Sucitto also says that it's important to stay in touch with our intentions rather than the final goal. And I remember Mother Teresa saying the same thing. She said that she took on projects that needed doing. She didn't worry about whether they were going to be successful or not, well, like whether she would achieve the goal or not. But because it was important to do, she did it, did her best. And it's interesting. Now, I don't know if this is a story from the Buddha. Maybe you can say afterwards, but this is a Buddhist story anyway. And there's this forest fire, and there's this little bird, and he goes to a lake, and he picks up a little bit of water in his bill and flies over to the forest fire and drops this drop of water. And it's going back and forth from the lake, you know, with this little beak full of water. And the other animals are making fun of the bird. But the bird just felt like, there's a fire. I want to do what I can to help.
It's a Jataka tale.
Oh, it's a Jataka
supposed
tale.
To be, you know, previous life.
Ah, there you go. Yeah. So, and probably that little bird inspired some other animals to do some good things too. I know one thing that inspires me is sometimes I go with on walks with friends who in their backpack have a garbage bag, and then whenever they see a piece of garbage, they don't comment on it. They don't like wail about people who throw garbage. They just silently pick it up, put it in their garbage bag, and they continue on their walk. And I just find that so inspiring. So I've got down here, consider, are we being existing in a way that is right and true for us? Or are we being in a way that we assume others want us to be? So what are we putting our energy towards? You know, what we find is right and true, or some assumption? Because you sure can't please other people, because there's enough people in the world that everybody's going to want you to be a different way. You can't be a million different ways. So you have to be the way that's right and true for you. And then once we're aware of what we truly want to do, it's important to do it without pride or egotism, and not be doing it for prestige or success. We're doing it for the love of the good. Putting energy into what is worthy leads to more energy and leads to joy. So notice, where does your sense of value and vitality arise from? What comes alive for you when you ask that question? So are we following these aspirations with right speech and right action? Are we acting with generosity, caring for others? Because remember, what we attend to, that's what we energize. And Ajahn Sucitto goes on to talk about how aspiration is a good energy with which to start a meditation practice. And a traditional way to get in touch with this is, it's called puja. And it's usually an act of honoring, like say a sacred image like the Buddha Rupa. See if I can, there. Yeah, there's our Buddha, one of our Buddha Rupas up there. And so puja is offering candles or incense or flowers to a sacred image. An image that evokes what is true or beautiful or good. And so if you look at this, well, it's a little bit small there, but it's heavy. I'm not going to carry it down, but it's just sort of earth colored, very grounded, steady, steadfast, and just a very peaceful, serene look on the image. So we're not worshiping the image. We're using that image to spark a sense of faith or peace or goodness, and to bring forth our own energy. So remember, the first two of the 5 powers of the mind are faith leads to energy. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be a Buddha Rupa. You can just bring to mind somebody you know who has beautiful, inspiring qualities, and use that to sort of inspire yourself and bring up energy. So this brings our mind into bright openness and gratitude, the perfect setup for our meditation practice. Now, energy can be used to make effort, and the Buddha talks about the 4 right efforts, so we want to be doing that. But effort is not the end goal of energy. So our goal is not to endlessly be putting out effort. The goal is to arrive at emotional stability and fullness of the heart. And this is Ajahn Sucitto's description of Nibbana, awakening. So he ends his chapter, the summary. He summarizes energy as, number 1, guard the mind against unskillful influences. 2, put aside what you feel is unhelpful. 3, establish what is good. And 4, support and encourage those skillful influences. So if you look at that, these are basically a rewriting of the Buddha's 4 right efforts. The first effort is to guard against the hindrances, to not allow them to arise in the first place. But then number 2, if they do arise, then we make an effort to let them go. Number 3, we put in the conditions for the factors of awakening to arise. And number 4, once arisen, we support them so they maintain or actually increase. Okay, so that's energy. Yeah, I need to mention that at the end. Okay, so we have some time for discussion or questions, reflections. Mic on. Do you want to pass it to Marilyn?
So I've been doing something natural where I was taking every ounce of energy that I had, thinking I was doing something good and being kind, and it totally depleted me, spiritually, mentally, physical, everything. And then I realized what I was doing. So now I'm thinking that my energy to balance it and not have it to one extreme or the other is to ask someone to do something for me. And the question, or what I was going to ask for them, for the person to do 2 things: to do an act of kindness for someone else, and then do an act of kindness for herself. And then I'm hoping, well, I guess I shouldn't say trying to, but to balance the energy there and balance the energy here, hopefully for me and someone else.
Yeah.
So that would be a proper way of put it,
I think that's beautiful. And it's Ajahn Punadamo talks about depression. He figures one of the best ways to help people come out of a depression is to do an act of service, do some volunteer work, because then you're taken out of yourself. And I really had that experience strongly after my husband died. It took about a month off work, I guess. And then when it was time to go back, and I only had I think 2 or 3 months to work before my retirement. He died just before our retirement. And the last thing I wanted to do was to go back to work. I just wanted to be finished. My life had been turned upside down and just wanted to be finished. And it was sort of boo-hoo, poor me, I have to go to work. But as soon as I got into my office and my first patient came in and my attention went over to them, problem solved. I was no longer focusing on myself going, boo-hoo, poor me. I was now focusing on the other person. So my attention was there. And I was totally distracted from any self-pity or, negative emotions. I was just totally involved in trying to support this other person. Yeah, it's so I think what your idea is just brilliant. Yeah. Yeah. You might have to scoot forward. It's not that long.
Thanks.
And if you could just touch it on your chin, that helps that'll help Sarah hear you.
The question's not really formulated, it's just in my mind, so
yeah.
it might come out really wonky, but
here, just touch here.
Okay.
Good, that's perfect.
I guess the question is how to have compassion for people who kind of take a strong, like, or have a strong emotional pull on you. I'm thinking in the context of our program and just how a lot of the leaders might not be as informed in these types of approaches or practices, and how it's like really kind of demanding emotionally, spiritually, physically, and it's kind of hard to have those boundaries that you're talking about. And yeah, just reflecting on the retreat when you guys were really emphasizing like choosing your friends wisely and who you're around wisely. And I know that's been difficult for some people. We've seen some really awesome people leave the program, and yeah, just kind of moving for that context, but then also just largely, like even I think with family, like a lot of males in my life seem to have that power over me, and like yeah, just wanting to maintain compassion for people who may not have these practices or approaches, and not kind of giving your power over.
Yeah. So I'll mumble around with a few different ideas that popped into my mind when you said that. So one thing, and this came from my experience. I had a colleague that I was, very good friends with, and my husband and I used to visit them like outside of work, as sort of a social thing. And my husband, who was the most amazing, accepting person, just finally told me that he wasn't going to visit with them anymore because her husband was an absolute boor. So he didn't run him down or anything. He just sort of basically said, I'm not visiting there anymore. And so unfortunately she got cancer and had to quit her job. And so I couldn't just see her at work. So the only way to see her would be to go and visit. But I also did not enjoy being around her husband. But I wanted to be with her. And so I had this situation. If I was going to see her, I had to be in her home where he was. And I just remember spending some time just thinking about him sort of as an innocent baby. Now, this isn't pure Buddhism because we know we don't come in as innocent babies. We come in with all the baggage from our past lives. But anyway, I sort of saw him. This is this was my sort of skillful means to be able to deal with the situation. I just sort of saw him as sort of this innocent baby who must have had some difficult situations when he was growing up, that he developed this habit energy of being a boor to sort of like probably keep people out there and not, penetrating his hurt heart. Like, I have no idea what it might have been, but having that image of him as sort of an innocent baby and having some difficult situation, that allowed me to go into their home and to be able to be with my friend and just not be, I truly stopped being as affected emotionally by his behavior, so not condoning his behavior in any way, but it allowed me to be in that situation. Now you're talking about maybe being with some teachers that, and I don't know how it is that they're behaving or whatever, but if there's some, actual unethical behavior going on, like, I'll just give another example from my own life. I think it was new when I was I was sort of newly graduated as a psychiatrist, and I was at our annual general meeting, and it was full of all these senior older men, older men psychiatrists, who terrified me. I was this scared little, unsure of myself, fresh graduate, right? And there's all these senior men who seemed very confident and everything. And I remember at this one meeting, they were talking about a psychiatry student who I knew, and she had made a complaint about a sexual harassment, and all of these adult male psychiatrists were tittering away, isn't this, like. Anyway, I was just sitting there doing a slow burn, and I was terrified, but I was just so upset about this. I forced myself, I stood up, and I can't remember, this is like so many decades ago, but I just said I was disappointed in my colleagues, like having this reaction. And I was just shaking in my boots. I was terrified, but I thought, this is not right. And I stood up and I said it. And it was very interesting. I think they just took it in and didn't make any comments. But the following year, they brought in some guidelines, about sexual harassment and stuff like that. So I got heard on some kind of a level. So, at some point, even though they're your teachers or whatever, we can have a discussion with them sometimes, even if it's scary. And now in that situation, it worked. I'll tell you, there's been lots of other situations in my life where I have brought forward something and it's been a train wreck, right? A total disaster. But again, going back to what Ajahn Sucitto said, we want to look at our intentions, not the outcome. So, if your intention is to bring up what's ethical, what's right, or whatever, even if it goes nowhere, your intention was to do something that was good. But, we don't have control over how other people are going to react. And so it could be a disaster, or like that one situation where I stood up and talked, it had a very good result. And we just don't know. So that's why we can't focus on what's the outcome going to be. We have to focus on, what's our intention? Is it sort of right and true? So that's, anyways, anybody else have any comments for Viriya?
Yeah, I just want to say something really quickly, Viriya, that hard to hear, like wisdom is really hard to come by. And there is this stage, when you're young, you have to come to grips with that. And it's really hard. People that we admire in many, 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 many ways, we end up not being able to admire them, in every way. It's just part of life. And it's a hard lesson because we would wish for it otherwise. But it could be that, one or two or three or four of you have some really heart-to-heart discussions together as students and boil it down to maybe one thing or two things that you think are really worthwhile feedback and would make the program better and more in line with these beautiful core values that it has. There's one other framework, and that is distinguishing intention versus impact. And often a person's intentions are very, very good. And I think the teacher's intentions are probably very, very good. And maybe there's this scarcity mentality that, we just have this little bit of time and we need to cram all this stuff in. And but that you could reflect as the students. The impact is that some things are being compromised because we can't fully digest some things and fully work them through and integrate them and whatever. I'm sort of,
You got it.
but that's the sense I'm getting from what you're sharing, you know. And this intent versus impact, beautiful framework, because then you can start by, and the Buddha did this all the time, you know, found the resonance, found the where you meet, and then would take the step, you know, once we have some trust and we have some. So if you talk with their intention and like how grateful you are and what a magnificent experience and opportunity this is, and then just reflect, maybe pick one or two that would really, you think, help. But the impact is blah, blah.
It's called the sandwich approach. You have the piece of bread, which is, you know, like praise them, talk about the good things, and then the filling is the little bit of criticism, and then you have the next piece of bread, which is the finishing off with some praise.
But the impact intent also means that people can feel very understood, and it's very gracious. Like, you actually hurt me, but it's like, I'm not saying you hurt me. It just, I think that your intentions were great, but it turns out the impact. And so you're acknowledging that they're not out to overburden you or, you know, walk over you. That.
And then I'll just briefly put in here the Buddha's definition of right speech. So, is it true? Is it beneficial? And then what's good timing? Don't try and bring up a difficult thing like this when somebody's tired or hungry or rushing off to another meeting or something. So you pick a good time, and then you do it. So, like, not in a public, you know, like you don't criticize somebody in front of a whole bunch of other people. You do it kind of privately, you know, or whatever. So did I get all the points there?
Yeah, I think the other thing that it's important that the Buddha says is you don't worry about whether it's pleasing. You worry. So, and the Buddha says a lot of times he's saying things that are very unpleasing, but so that's not, you know, how it's going to be received. It's like, is there a chance that this has benefit? Which is what Sanghamitta is relaying when she was with the psychiatrists, you know. There is a chance. Therefore,
at that moment I didn't know, and that was pre-Buddhism. I didn't know the teachings of the Buddha. I just knew that this was horribly wrong, what was happening.
Yeah,
you know, and I just felt I had to say something.
And the males in your life, that's another whole topic, and when we can talk about it, you know. Yeah, please. Yeah, and then we should stop, but please. Okay.
Yeah, something that came up for me as you were describing that is experience of being, yes, in a work relationship where and I think a lot of what I think so was referring to there, of like recognizing that this person had a lot of good, but also that like it was challenging parts, you know, in the delivery of things, and being able to like get some space and reflect and see that, but then the challenge of being able to hold and carry that sort of boundary stance into the situation real time. And one of the things that I found really helpful was to give myself a physical cue. And so mine was that like I would just somehow get a hand near my heart, which was this very like something that I think I did it enough that people started to think that like I just liked to like hold myself a little bit that way or something. But for me, it was a mindfulness cue of my boundary. You know, it was a physical reminder of I'm not letting this unskillful delivery land too deep in me, and having for me, it's just a mindfulness cue, but the physicality of it was really helpful. So I just offer that as an additional,
Okay, so we're a bit over time here, so we'll come to a close here. And just before we end, we've got 2 more days on our fundraiser for the Save On food card. So if you buy groceries from Save On, Save On is offering us this beautiful fundraiser at no cost to you. So if you order a food card, it can be either $100, $200, or $300, as many as you want. The order has to be in by the 5th of this month, so I think that's Sunday. Then you get, by about the middle of the month, you get the card, and so you pay $100 and you get $100 worth of groceries. So there's no cost to you, but Save On gives us $10, like 10%. So it's a beautiful way to do fundraising. So the way you do this is you send an e-transfer to ctbcfund@gmail.com. And then out of that, we write a check to Save On and order the number of cards. And in the notes section, just say what size card you want and say what your email is so that we can email you and tell you the cards are in. Anyway. Okay. So,
and lastly, there's a moon day on Sunday.
Yes.
So the monastery will be open 9 to 5, and you can come in at any time. And we'll start the day with check-in, and you can ask about your meditation if you wish, and then we'll end the day the same.
Yeah, so if you have questions about your meditation practice, just to help you move forward in it, those 2 opportunities. Yeah. And if you stay over the lunch hour, just bring a packed lunch, and lunch will be eaten in silence. Okay, so we usually end with one of the Brahma Viharas, one of the beautiful emotions. And today it's metta, loving friendliness. May you be well. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be loving. May you be calm. May you be safe. May no problems come to you. May no difficulties come to you. May no harm come to you. May you meet with spiritual success. May you have the patience, the courage, the determination, the strength, the inner clarity, and the wisdom to meet and overcome the inevitable problems in life, to meet and overcome the inevitable difficulties in life, to meet and overcome the inevitable frustrations in life, and to meet and overcome the inevitable failures in life. May the whole of our hearts be filled with loving friendliness. May every cell of our bodies be filled with loving friendliness. May every level of our consciousness be purified by loving friendliness. May we build a healthy, happy aura of loving friendliness all around us, through which no evil thought, word, or intention, or any form of harm may penetrate, but from which loving friendliness may radiate in all directions. And may we be protected. May the merit of our practice be shared with all sentient beings, named and unnamed. Lise, Blair, Agnes, Tim, Kelly. May all beings be well and happy. Thank you.